All right, so round three. So, I like to get into something like writing life, pop culture, something like that. So I thought a fun conversation then today would be the professionalization of your writing career versus treating it more like a hobby. Um, so for each of you, do you treat your writing as a profession or like a hobby? What are their pros and cons, each approach? And then I think we've kind of started. I think we're back to you, Dario, if you want to take us.
Yeah, gosh, you ask some good questions, Bill.
That's why I
Um,
host the show.
yeah, you could do well at this. You're good. I'm kind of with Stephen King when he talks about approaching it with deadly seriousness. I think you better approach it as a professional. That said, of course, you need to be playful as well, but we'll come to that. But I think unless you're going to try and really be serious about writing well and giving it your best, which to me is what a professional does, then you shouldn't be doing it. That said, I'm not sure I could ever see it as a hobby. I'll be honest, I have, although I did used to, I have no illusions about ever making a living as a writer. And some people would define professionalism as being a full-time writer and making a living through it. We all know how incredibly hard and rare that is. So I would caution people against seeing professionalism as being a full-time writer who lives from their writing. Maybe if you take it seriously enough in the first place and approach it as a professional, maybe you'll get there. But hobby sounds kind of, I think you need playfulness, but I'm not, even a certain innocence, but hobby, I'm not sure I like that word. It sounds like you're not giving it a real good,
would you put
sincere
so
shot.
when I was thinking of the question, I was thinking more like and so this is why I'm asking this, if there's a different word you would put in place of hobbyism versus professionalism. So in the sense that, like, I have lots of friends that love golf, right? I liked it when I was younger, right? But they'll spend tons of time golfing. They will spend tons of money golfing. They will be really trying to get better all the time. But they also don't think that at some point they're going to be on the PGA tour. Right. So it is their hobby, but you can be very passionate about a hobby and take it very seriously without, minimalizing what that means, right? So I don't know if there's a different word you would like to insert in there. That's when I was framing the question, that's kind of what I was thinking.
No, you're absolutely right, and thank you for defining that, because that's absolutely true. I mean, I've had hobbies I've taken very seriously. So yeah, I think you nailed it. But I think professionalism is important to me. I like to, if I'm going to do something, I want to give it my best shot. I don't do things in a half-assed way. I'd rather not do them all. But I'm old and I've gone through that learning process. I've done my days of approaching things in a half-assed way.
So you're saying there's hope for me. There may be some point where I'm not half-assing everything.
Yeah, another couple of decades. I think you have to give writing your best, absolute best. And hobby, yeah, in the way you defined it, yes, sure. Why not?
Sure. So maybe then you want to take it from there, Jesse?
Yeah, I agree 100% with Dario. I obviously take it very seriously. Hobby, but I mean, it's hard to, I don't know how to define professionalism. Sometimes I submit my work to magazines, or I'm working on a novella or reworking a novella which I want to perhaps have published traditionally. I mean, and that scene is brutal, or at least it's been brutal to me.
Oh,
It
it's
definitely,
terrible.
it definitely makes you feel like you're not a professional, right? Like,
Mhm.
so if you
So
define it that
I'm sorry,
way,
Jesse, maybe maybe let me phrase the question here slightly differently just for the conversation. So taking aside what I just said about hobbyism, I don't want to act like neither one takes it seriously. I think it's more like professionalism, as in like I want to make
right.
this my career and make as much money as absolutely possible,
Ah,
versus you can love it both ways, right? But versus this is something I love to do, and I absolutely take golf seriously. I absolutely take writing in this case seriously, whatever that hobby is. So
I,
both cases, we take them seriously, but one case you're really trying to monetize it, versus the other where hopefully it makes you money, right? I don't think anyone doesn't want to make money, right? But to where it's not something that it's not your career, like you're happy being a teacher.
so do you
whatever.
see writing as a career choice or a, yeah?
Yeah.
I think I go back and forth. I mean, honestly, I think I aspire to just have it be a hobby. I would love to just be, the person who's like, I just do this because I love it and that's it. Like, but I'm not. There's also a part of me that wants to be read and wants to get my work out there. And so then I engage with the jungle, as it were. Like,
Yeah.
I would love to just be that guy who's just like, doesn't care. I mean, cares about his work, but doesn't care about anything beyond that. So I think I go back and forth. I have periods where I submit stuff. I have periods where I don't. I think it's just a lot of like emotional back and forth. It's tough. I think for me, it's tough to be a writer in that sense, especially because we live in this culture where you're really defined by what you do, right? I've spent time with a lot of writers who are doing well, and that is a scene unto itself, right? I would say that's very much like that very much parallels like a career situation, right?
Sure.
Do I fit in there? Maybe not, but also, of course, I want to be read. So I think I go back and forth, and I think I would love to just have it be a hobby, but also I also, want it to be, I want to go somewhere with it eventually, hopefully, and be read and be recognized. So yeah, I would just say that's a tough question. And I think hobbyism is the way that like, this seems like the best way to me, but am I there? No, not 100%, if that makes sense.
Sure. Not fair enough. Gaby, you want to take it from there?
Sure. Okay, so I'll start with the cons. They're they're converse of each other. If you want to make book writing and similar types of things your career, you can have your joy robbed from you because you have to take it so seriously. You're also got to always be thinking about money. And on the other side, are you taking it seriously enough?
Sure.
Because, I mean, a lot of people pursue different things and they want to get better at them. And that's what this is all about. I mean, that's how every writer starts. It's how anything starts. The first thing I thought of when you used the word professionalism was, if you do self-publish, please get a copy edit.
Amen.
I'm glad you have that on the show.
And you get two editors right here. Reach out.
I will do it for free if you're my friend, and I don't want your book to go out in the world like that. I have bought like acquaintances' books and been like, oh my God, and then also a few little basics: no timeline jumping and don't leave holes in your story. So when you said the word professionalism, I went back into editor mode.
Right, sure.
Like, if you're looking at it as a pursuit that may turn into something, it does take the pressure off of you to make money and make financial success, which I think is going to yield your better creative work. And there's a quote from David Bowie about never play to the gallery. You're supposed to make the art that you need to make. You're not supposed to look around and see what's popular. I had a minute.
I'm so with you.
Yeah, I was like, I
Right.
should write romance novels. Everybody buys them. You know what? I can't write a romance novel. I'm terrible.
Right. Sure.
Never right to the market. I agree. A lot of people wouldn't agree with us on that, but yeah, I'm right with you, Gaby.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, you want to do your best work, and if you're gonna connect to better paying work in the future, you need to do your best work now. And so, if
Right.
you're going to do your best work now, you're going to like what you're doing. And so, also when you take the desperation of trying to make money out of the equation, it does give you the freedom that you wouldn't have with a client. You're not writing so that someone else will love it. I mean, you are, but you aren't. You're writing from your core. So those are my thoughts.
No, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I loved what you said about that, because I a lot resonated with me. But one of them is, when you professionalize things, you have to have a market, right? And so one of the really hard things, and I mean, Jesse, you alluded to it, is that not even alluded, just plain stated it. When you want to try to traditionally publish, they want to know what bucket you fit into, right? You're going to go on this rack, on this bookshelf, and then we can compare you to this writer very easily. That might be okay, but you know what? Like, Star Wars came out, there wasn't a lot of fantasies set in space as it is, right? It's really a fantasy story set in space. It's Harry Potter, right? Like, those things that really truly like blow up usually aren't the, just standard romance novel.
So true.
And so you can, in the sake of trying to monetize everything, professionalize everything you're doing, get all that stress. And that's one of the ones I always feel bad, because then you'll see, like, and I spend, 30 minutes on social media a week, maybe. I try to post some stuff for the show. I just have such little patience for being on there at all. But the quick little scan I'm on there when I post something, and try to scan for, like, if you guys have posted anything, or just, you know what I mean? Like, I usually just try to see, like, is there anyone I can support real quick while I'm here? You'll see people miserable, like, oh, I didn't sell anything this week. And it can be a very stressful place, trying to make a career of it. It is hard. And the reality is that you can, but you also need to think about, is there multiple streams of money you can make here, right? Can, like you and Dario have done, is, can you edit, make some money that way? Can you, we're trying to do with this show, is, can I start getting this show out on the road and start this show, make a little bit of money? But I never look at it as, I need to make money off the show. I look at this as a labor of fun. But if I need to, like, at some point get rid of my career, the show needs to make me a little money for me to be able to spend the crazy amounts of time I spend recording, editing, and finding new guests and everything else, like, I do for it. And then there's the writing. So I think you really have to be honest with what you want. Like, I think the questions to ask yourself, right, if you want to professionalize or not, are, why are you writing?
Yes.
Right? Are you writing because you love it and you want to share it? I think everyone wants to share it. I think that's okay. Like, you obviously want to share it, but is it something that you're just so compelled to do that it affects your day, and you just have to get it out, and there's a billion stories and you feel like you'll never get to them all if you don't, right? Do you like your current career? Right? Because if you're, a teacher, you're a fireman, whatever it might be, you may really love what you're doing. You may love your lifestyle. How much do you feel about that? Because if you try to transition, that could be a hard transition, right? Like, luckily my wife makes a decent living. I made a decent living. We got into our house at a great time, but it's a hard transition to, like, transition over. So you need to kind of know, why are you doing it? How do you feel about your career? Is it something you can do passionately, be very serious about, but you still want to have this job, this security of kids, right? I've stuck in the corporate world for a long time because I have 4 kids. you know, and it's nice to make sure that the mortgage is paid and kids are fed, you know. And then like, what are you willing to sacrifice? So, because even like, and I've had, you know, the really, besides the fact that I just have a blast doing this show, like the open bars, like the main show and things, getting a chance to like talk and like really get to meet everyone. And my secret, like the whole secret to like the mild success I've had is that I look at it as just a chance to like have a human connection with someone like every episode. Like I don't look at it like, oh, I'm trying to do this thing. Like I'm just like, oh, I just want to like have a human connection. I hope people pick up on that. Because it's, for one, it's awesome for me. It's like to make all these friends, and we have open bar. Part of the reason I like to do this is like, oh, like, you know, me and Gaby haven't talked since December, you know, like, you know, and Jesse, when we thought, like, I get a chance to like, you know, connect with everyone again. But what are you willing to sacrifice to do it? Because it can be a lonely place to start, you know, and even some of the best sellers I've had on the show and things now that make a living off of it. One of them, SJ Roseanne, was on the show. She was really funny. She's in Manhattan, and she like, so here I am. So like, you know, we were talking about her transition. She was an architect and she transitioned to writing full time. And she's like, oh, look, so this is my office. Behind me, you see my kitchen. There's one more room. That's my bedroom. This is it. This is what I got. She's also in Manhattan, right? But it's like, this is what I've got. So you're sacrificing something. Like she had a posh like architecture job doing, very funnily enough, I think she said it was like police station, firehouses, and zoos was the main things like they did. But it was a transition, and like, you know, how you do it. So I think if you ask yourself those questions on, do you want to make this profession versus something that is more in that hobby vein? I don't belittle hobby. I think hobbies are very important. I think, and you can be really passionate about them. I don't think there's anything. Not only do I not think there's anything wrong with hobbies, I think there's everything right with them.
Oh yeah.
And so it's, do you want to go that route to where this becomes the thing you have to make money on? Do you want to go that route? And I think those are three kind of questions. There's probably more. But I think if you ask yourself those, you can probably get to a fair answer. I think you can get to somewhere place where you can really go, okay, this is really what I want to do. I want to, because not to belabor past guests, but I had John Gilstrap on, and he's done a bunch. He's a thriller writer. He's done a bunch of New York Times, USA Today bestsellers. It's very funny, actually. We talked about this a little too. Is he's had like 3 or 4 books optioned to be made into films, and none of them have been made into films yet. And this is
classic.
You know, and so his first book and his second book went bestseller and got optioned. And I think he says it on the show, and I'll try to link him up here. It'll definitely be after, because I think he's going to be August 2024. But so he makes like $1 million doing this. And so he quits his job. You know, he actually kind of owned a company. He ends up selling the company to like the employees. It was like a small firm. And he didn't like it. It was like he likes being around people, right? And it was like writing was very lonely. He ended up getting another day job being a director of like safety.
Wow.
And did that. And now he's a little older. He's retired now. He's actually going to do a few of these open bars, you know, coming up. But so there's writing can be lonely, you know, too. So it's like there's real things you have to like think to yourself, like, you know, what is that life really like? Are you willing to sacrifice having that pack? Because when they closed my factory, I still work for the company like part-time now. But the hardest thing for me, and this was prior to COVID, was when they closed my factory, is I kind of lost that pack. And I have 4 kids, I have a wife. And like 2 of the kids are still here at that time. My daughter and granddaughter were still here. That community, you know, and having a community pushing towards kind of the same thing, it can be hard. It can be hard to do it. So just my thoughts on, like, you know, the general progress of where you want to go with it.
I think I agree with all that. And I think that those are great, like, practical questions. I think for me, it's more of just, you know, it's years of conditioning, right? I come from a family where, you know, it's all my siblings have pretty standard careers. And, I was taught very early on that this is, kind of the path you should take, or the general path you should take. And I'm now doing the polar opposite of that, right? So I think emotionally,
Black sheep.
yeah, 100%, like classic, like almost cliche. So I think it's been an emotional struggle for me, especially when I first started. So I started trying to get serious about publishing maybe 2 years ago. I had a few mild successes, which was great, a lot of rejection, but it's been, just the emotional part of it. It's like, this has to fit into a box, right? I was taught that this has to be, if you're going to be professional, you have to be successful, and successful means publication. And so that's just this struggle that is really actually, like Gaby said, it's, taking away from the creativity and the freedom. So I think basically I'm saying this because I agree with all the practical things you're saying, but I think probably for a lot of writers, there's also that whole emotional component, right? Because it's like, if you get the deal, or if you get the whatever it is, like, then that's almost like a validation or an acknowledgement that, oh yeah, you are a professional, which is silly because you can't control that, right?
Right. Well, it's ego, right?
Yeah.
And I say ego not necessarily like it's a bad thing, because we all have one. I joke about mine all the time. I overinflate mine. I don't have as much of an ego as I like to pretend, but there is, right? So like I remember like when I first started, like I really wanted to win an award.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Like I really want award-winning author on there, right? And then so I win one. Oh, okay. I really want to win too, And so then it's like, I actually won it's like a regional award, Southwestern regional, some award, a Fire for Christmas won like last week. And I haven't even posted about it yet. I keep forgetting. I'm like, oh, I should probably do something. I'm like, whatever. Like it's
Well done. That's not your first one either.
No.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Well deserved.
Yeah. No, thank you. But there's the ego pursuit of it. And I'm not actually trying to discourage anyone. Like I trying to professionalize all of this. But I think if you're honest with yourself on why you're doing it, I think that's kind of the important part, right? Like the real reason, like I feel so compelled to do it is that like I have so many stories I want to tell, and
exactly,
I wanted to go so far with them. Like I've been working on Pirates of Appalachia, which I know Dario and Jesse we talked about, I think at different times. And I just finished, quote unquote. But I have so much things like that I want to do that if I don't professionalize it, I'll never get to half of them. I'll probably never get to all of them anyways, which I'm very comfortable with. I'd rather have more ideas than less. But there is that certain point in life, no, I have all of this that I'm truly compelled to do. But versus, is it just an ego thing, right? I would be careful with, is it just a vanity project? Right.
I think it's a matter of like, to me, like coming back to that truth, like dealing with all these messages, these cultural messages and messages from your upbringing every day, but being able to keep coming back to, wait, okay, I set out to do this because this is why, and so I think that's the back and forth and the tug of war that I'm constant. It's like, it's being able to, and it's not like you have a whole bunch of people around you who are like, oh yeah, no, wait, this is why you're doing it. It's more like, what are you doing? Like, you have to,
like, how are you going to monetize that? Right. Are you going to get a real job? Like that's the hard part, right? The cultural thing. Yeah.
Gaby's been wanting to say something for ages, but she's too polite to interrupt. I kept seeing her hand up. And then I'm going to interrupt her. But
okay, cool. So I got 3 men on the line here. I'm going to tell you my lingerie story. So
very good.
Thank God.
I used to work for Victoria's Secret when I was a young lady.
And
I did. I worked at the mall. I used to be able to like look at a bra and tell you if it was a 34C or a 38D. I folded them all day long and I'd help people and stuff. Anyway, one of my managers was very obsessed with sales, and she would take me aside every day and tell me how many times I'd sold something. The other manager was cool. And we just hang out and talk and whatever. By not focusing on how much I was selling, I sold more.
Yeah.
So when you think about how are you doing this writer's career, like if you obsess over it, you are not bringing in good energy. And so like as I'm hearing you all talking, I'm thinking about, I just reread this book called Ask and It Is Given. And it's kind of a refresher on the law of attraction and what am I putting out there and what am I getting back, and what thoughts are plaguing me and what thoughts are uplifting me, right? And you really have to, celebrate every win. And in addition to that, you really have to stop the hyper focusing on anything. Like right now, two of my journals are discounted to like $3.50, and Amazon did that. I didn't do that. But I'm trying to sell them anyway because I'm like, well, it's a deal.
Right.
Like you gotta take your wins where you can get them. So, and I've been posting about it, and I haven't looked. I don't know if anybody's bought them yet, and it.
Amen.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, Dario, you said you wanted to break in if you want to take it from there.
That's the truth, by the way. Yeah, don't hyper focus on it. No, Bill, you kind of touched on it a moment ago anyway about it not being a real job, right? It's not being a real job. So I've lived in well, I'm English, obviously, but I've lived in Greece and I've spent a lot of time in Italy, and writers are regarded very differently in the rest of the world. For some reason, writing as a profession is very devalued in the Anglophone countries. You tell someone you're a writer in Greece and they respect you. You get an instant respect, and the same in Italy, the same in a lot of other countries. The reason perhaps I reacted a little to the word hobby is because in a recent conversation with a friend who's written a couple of very good books, she had said to me, I'll try and quote it fairly accurately. When she'd actually committed to writing as a full-time thing, not necessarily as a view to making a living, because she didn't need to make a living out of it, but to give it her best. And she told someone she was a writer when they asked what she did. They said, well, something like, when are you going to get a real job? And that's very common. Or how's your hobby going? And it's really what we do is really undervalued for some reason, America and England, much more than it is in the rest of the world, where you're seen as someone who actually thinks about things and tries to understand people and the way the world works and a shit ton of other things. So that's perhaps why the word hobby kind of triggered me a little.
I needed a trigger warning. I'm sorry.
I'm so wounded.
Yeah, it's true. It's a lot of, there isn't a lot of encouragement really, which is tough. And I think in some ways I feel like that's why I know I'm a writer, because like notwithstanding all of the like lack of encouragement and like I still just have to write.
Right.
Wake up and like, well, I still have to do this.
Right. That's the best reason to write, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best reason to write, Jesse.
Yeah. Yeah, amen. I mean, I always think that's the thing, is that it's like I've changed a little over the years. My wife used to joke with me. She'd be like, why don't you tell anyone you're a writer? Because if people would ask, I would tell them anything besides. And I'm like, for one, this person doesn't read anything. So unless I'm Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, he doesn't know. He doesn't know any other writers. So he doesn't know anything I've written. And not that I'm that big anyways, but I'm like, not going to know. And two, it's just a segue for that person to then tell me the great story they have or
Oh,
why their
God.
life, I should write their memoir for them. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so,
Yeah.
so I would just dread it because I don't need to hear any of it. I don't want
Yeah.
this conversation. I want to hear about the great book that you're, maybe or may not write, like you just go write it. You have no interest in what I have to say.
Yes.
It's about you. So,
Back and
but I
say,
think,
you need to write something.
mhm, right. Yeah. So, but I think that's the thing is like, are you compelled to do it? Then, be compelled to do it. And I think, what I tend to think of it is one is if you look at it, and I'm not trying to expound one view versus the other. I just pros and cons of it, right? Just hypotheticals going through. Like I've already said, I'm trying to professionalize it, have to some degree. But I think if you truly look at it more like it's your passion project, right? Taking the hobby word out of it. This is my passion project. Well, there's a little less stress in that regard than I need to be on social media for 4 hours today. Right. Because what I learned very quickly about social media is I never liked it, but then also it's just a complete time drain. And the idea that now I can spend 4 hours on social media and write the things I want to write and write them to the quality I want to write them. There's just a time balance. Like that's not going to happen. Like I guess I would never live. But like we talked about earlier, like, are you going to be a great writer if you don't live? You're not. So I was like, you need to be able to live and be a person. You need to be able to write. You need to spend time with your family. And you can spend odd hours like beating the algorithm and just posting on Twitter constantly and replying to everyone and reposting every meme you've seen, right? Like it can be a trap. So I think when you go the passion project route, then you kind of keep in focus what you really care about. It may be a little better. But if you do want to go and I want to write the next, the great thriller or write romance, that's fine. Just keep in mind what you're doing, right? You might be sacrificing, right? What are you willing to sacrifice in that route? You might be sacrificing the story you really want to tell, the things you may really have to say, for the sake of commerce. And if you want to do that, that's fine. We all sacrifice things to have a roof over our head. So that's human experience, right? You sacrifice things to go kill the woolly mammoth or to go pick the berries, right? Like it's all trade-off. So, anywho, so anything else before we put a bow on it? Anyone else want to chime in?
I just want to say that, from going from a down note to a positive one, these things are wonderful. Another thing I love about being a writer is meeting other writers and editors. That gives me encouragement. That gives me hope. And reminds me that even though this is kind of an isolating path, I still am part of a community. Like we're all
absolutely
doing this, that's really nice. This has been really, really uplifting. So thank you.
For me too. And, I have a saying, writers need writers because we get one another.
Yeah.
We get it. And you need to connect with other writers because God knows a lot of people don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't get why it's important.
Exactly.
So absolutely yes on that. And thank you, Bill, for the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and that's part of the reason. Like, I'm thank you, Jess, for bringing that up. Is that part of the reason I get excited about these open bar episodes? Was that it was like, okay, I want to build a community out of this. Well, community needs more than just one-on-one. I think absolutely needs to happen. We need to have one-on-one conversations, but then it's also just get everyone together, talk about things, talk about writing things. I can actually be, and Daria knows this very well from us hanging out. I usually have like a 10-minute max on writing things, and then I'm going to talk Bigfoots or something, right? Like I'm just like, we're going to go talk about other things. But it's that space just to talk about those things and just be open and like, and be willing to disagree and be willing to talk pros and cons, like just, whatever, like it's just all what we're thinking, all what we're feeling. Like it's, there's no right or wrong all the time with it. And that was the other portion is every time I see little things on writing, it's people dictate as if from Mount High and they have their tablets. And really it's about what works for you. Right. It always is. I like the first one's almost always writing rules now because of that. It's what works for you. There's obviously nuance. And if you get 4 people together, you get 4 writers together, you'll get 3 to 4 different, opinions on it. You'll get a bunch of nuance. And then anyone watching this can then take away from it and go, okay, well, this is what I think. Right. And maybe it's going to be a 5th thing. And that's okay. So anyway, thank you so much, guys, for joining today. Any parting thoughts before we go?
Just thank you. Gratitude for you guys. Honestly,
Yeah, same.
Good work.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you to all of you for hanging out with me, and also just a reminder to take all your wins wherever you can get them.
Amen. That's the other thing. It's like
Amen.
be grateful. Yeah, it's true. It's hard. It's so easy to take things for granted. I remember when I first got published, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. No, when's the next one? It's like, you got to really take, you have to really appreciate every little thing that comes your way. I fully believe that.
In the 15 minutes before I came on here, I got a text, and I'm learning how to be a grant writer. And you pretty much have to do an application for this particular organization to even do an application, do a grant. You have to ask first, and they have to look your first ask and say it's good enough. And we got the news, it's good enough.
Yay.
It's so exciting. And I'm not getting paid, but I don't care because
Great.
I'm so excited to be able to help people. And so, right, and it's like I run in the house and I'm like, Bobby, and but then like it's on to the next task, right? You have that moment and then you're like, okay, well now I got to get to work. But you have to just take all your wins.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. It's
no problem. And thanks so much, Gabby, for sticking through. Like, I know you weren't feeling well, so
steroids are amazing.
In sickness and in health.